I am recording, and it is recording, yes. Sorry. All right, now I'm ready. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, I'm recording mine too. We are live, and with that being said, me and Brian, we're going to do a 1, 2, 3 clap to sync ourselves up. So, you ready? 1, 2, 3, clap. Okay. I'm Fathery.
And this is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek. Insert the theme song here.
I'll be Dave and try to be in the thing.
In the agony booth?
Yeah, the agony booth.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Starship Texas for the 99th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. And today we are talking about Star Trek PICARD Season 1, Episode 9, Et in Arcadia Ego, Part 1. So this is our third attempt to record a podcast over this episode, or about this episode, I should say. But this is actually going to be the best version of it, because all the stuff I said before was really dumb, and I saved all the really smart stuff to say now.
So,
but yeah, this is an episode written by Michael Chabon and Ayelet Waldman, and directed by Akiva Goldsman, and is the first part of the 2-part season 1 finale. It's also named after a painting that's about the painting that seems to be about death, and the name of the painting, Et in Arcadia Ego, implies that even in paradise there is death. That death is everywhere.
Is it safe to say that of all the TV shows out there, Star Trek probably has the most Latin titles?
It does have a lot. This is like the 9th one to do it, I think.
Certainly per capita, at least.
Yeah, there
must be a show out there somewhere where they had every title in Latin, but something.
We are well over 700 episodes at this point, and I do want to say, for those of y'all that don't know, that one of the reasons why we were delayed in getting this podcast out, why it wasn't out Sunday, we were having some technical issues with YouTube taking down our live streams, but also I was kind of pushed back because of passing in my family. My dog, named after Philippa Georgia from Star Trek Discovery, Pippi the Pug, or her full name, Her Most Imperial Majesty, Mother of the Fatherland, Overlord of Vulcan, Dominus Kronos, Regina Andor, Emperor Philippa Georgia Augustus Eoponius Centaurus, passed away over the weekend, and that kind of threw our ship off course. But we are back now, and I'm just gonna put like a little picture of my puppy right here for y'all to look at.
Such a wonderful puppy.
And then you can look at me and Brian over there if you want. Okay. But the show must go on, and I'm going to scroll through these pictures here, and I'm going to ask Brian to give his opening statement on how he felt about this episode, Et in Arcadia Ego, Part 1.
Well, I have to admit, of almost all the episodes, I don't have an overall big statement I can make about this one. It had all sorts of interesting bits, and it's clearly moving in some direction. I think perhaps the biggest reason, if I was going to try to come up with a reason why I don't have a more cohesive statement to say on it overall, is that it is only the first half of a story. I mean, yes, everything's felt very serialized, but this is definitely the most serialized episode of this season of Picard, in that it really just kind of stops rather than having and it has a cliffhanger, of course, but I don't really know what most of it means or anything, and it's really hard to evaluate its quality it's without seeing what the second half is going to be and how they use all these pieces that they have set up. So that is but I liked it. This isn't to say I didn't like it. I enjoyed it. There was some interesting stuff. There were some good surprises, which it's nice to have a few surprises this late in the game. There was also some stuff that I felt was slightly predictable, but overall, it was good and enjoyable, and there were some great moments in it. I just didn't necessarily come away with a big, powerful, emotional reaction to the thing that I have to some of the earlier episodes. So I suppose you could say it's that the punch of most stories is usually in the third act, and we have not gotten the third act of this story. Hence, I have not been punched. So I am having trouble evaluating the punch since it has not yet happened. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's fair to say because this episode doesn't really stand on its own that well. It's obviously even though it's the 9th of the 10 episodes, it does very much feel like the middle part of a story. But for me, the big takeaway I had is that I am relieved in some ways that now they've kind of made it clear that the overall story for the season is not going to be man versus machine. The artificial intelligence is bad. Any smart computer is going to turn into Skynet and kill all of us type of story, which Discovery did in season 2 and kind of disappointed me. I often bring up that Star Trek Discovery Season 2 didn't even bother to give a motivation to their big bad artificial intelligence Control. They just kind of expected the audience to assume that a big supercomputer would be evil and want to eradicate organic life. So this is a little bit more nuanced than that. So I was relieved on that front. Also, it gave us something that my typical co-host Dave, who couldn't make it here tonight because he was busy with work stuff, something that he's been asking for a lot in new Star Trek is he wants to have these moral quandaries where characters kind of have to weigh the options and figure out what's the right thing to do. We're getting that now with mainly through Soji and her character's decision that she has to make here. And the fact that we're dealing with something that's big and cosmic and spans entire galaxies and is godlike. I think it's fair to call this race that we're kind of not introduced to, but we're told about, that we learn about. They do sound to be like on like that god level. And that kind of feels a little weird for Star Trek. But if you think about it, that's actually pretty traditional to do the Roddenberry humans of the future having to deal with godlike alien entities.
Yeah, that's very Trek.
That goes back to season 1 TOS.
And again, even compared to Q, it sounds like these guys are pretty small potatoes. But and there's been a lot of Q in Star Trek.
Yeah, or the Prophets, or the Organians, or the Cestus 3 entities from Arena. Like, there's a laundry list of literally Apollo.
Yes.
So, this is definitely, I don't want to say familiar territory, because they found a way to make it fresh and different, and we are boldly going to strange new worlds and meeting new life and new civilization, which, again, the stuff Star Trek should always be about. But yeah, like this episode, it didn't really impress me on any type of like a big way that kind of, gives me like a cool hot take here. It definitely just feels like a segment of a story, and I won't really be able to weigh it until we see next week what their fulfillment on the things that are set up here in part 1. But with that being said, that's it for the puppy pictures. But let's just go ahead and talk about this episode in general. To sum it up with the short answer, as Agnes Girardi would like. If you're watching the video, you can see her pictured right there, bracing for this terrible summary I'm about to do. But the short answer is Picard and the crew of the La Sirena, as well as 7 of 9 and Eleanor on the Borg cube. Everybody crash lands on Soji's homeworld. We meet some new characters there, as well as a new Soong character for Brett Spiner to play, another Trek tradition. And we find out a bit more about the Domitian vision that the Romulan Zatvash was all about. Their secret that synthetic life will lead to the destruction of the galaxy. And there is this multi-galactic federation of super advanced synthetic life that can be summoned to save fellow synths from organics. And with a Romulan fleet on its way to destroy all of Soji's synthetic brethren, she has to make this hard choice. Does she ultimately go along with the synths and their salvation? And doing so would eradicate all organic life. And it ends with her kind of seeming to go along with them, but there's obviously room for doubt, and maybe she'll double cross them and help Picard next week, or we don't know. But the stakes are really high, and that's how they set things up for the final episode next week. And we'll just go ahead and kind of break down the entire episode scene by scene, which is easy to do. This is very linear, kind of. For the most part, all the characters are in the same place. But yeah, we open with some transwarp action, with the transwarp corridor taking the La Sirena to Soji's homeworld, Gulian 4, or as she calls it, Coppelius.
Yes. And not just taking them a little bit, takes them right to the freaking planet. Like the Borg had set up a conduit that goes straight to this planet.
Yeah, it's literally like right there next to the planet's doorstep.
Yeah.
I think that was more plot convenience. Maybe the Borg had some business here at some point in time. We don't know.
Yeah, my hunch is plot convenience. It's the sort of things that, they put something in the script and then the special effects team interprets it their own way that isn't necessarily what the scriptwriter intended. But yeah, I think you're right that that's where we're going with this, but it does seem a little surprising.
But yeah, this is like when Soji is like starting to get like her memories back, and she recognizes the planet, she remembers the name of it. And then all of a sudden her ex-boyfriend shows up, and we get a cool little space battle with Narek and his scout ship.
I doubt we're going to get it, but I would really like a better explanation for how he found them, because they lost
I got this for you.
Oh, okay. I want to hear that, because they say he extrapolated our course, but they didn't set course for the conduit until after Girardi has had all of her tracer compound negated. So the course didn't even exist, or it wasn't even conceived of when he last had a chance to spot the ship.
So I thought about that too, but then it occurred to me, he knew their destination before they did. When he was back on the Borg cube, he's the one who actually figured out where Soji's planet was.
Yes.
So because of that, he would already know like the direction they would eventually be working towards.
Yes.
And so that's how he caught up with the La Sirena. He might have actually been keeping an eye on Deep Space 12 and seeing if the ship was coming, into that area, and also like kind of watching to see if like they turned to go to Gulian 4. So I think that's how he did it. Now, like the characters on the La Sirena, they don't know what Narek knows. So they're like, oh, I don't know. I guess he just calculated it based on like where he saw us going before. But their theory is trash. Narek was actually a few steps ahead of them all along. So I think it actually works.
I suppose an alternative that just occurred to me was maybe he got a hold of the Borg transwarp conduit maps as well. But yeah, I don't know.
That too, but I don't want everyone to have Borg transwarp technology.
Well, no, I'm just saying people who spent a bunch of time on the cube might have access to such things. But yeah, I don't know. Either one sounds a little dodgy. I'm willing to live with it, whatever. But it kind of implies he was following them well cloaked. But they also established that the La Sirena can detect detect when it's being followed by ships. Even stealthy Romulan ones, because that's how Rios keeps figuring out he's being followed. And which actually implies that he got a hold of some of those Dominion anti-proton cloak penetrating scanners from that we see in the Dominion War.
It would actually make sense if the Tal Shiar recovered some of that technology.
Yeah. So, well, more importantly, that Rios recovered some of that technology somehow, but maybe this many years later, everybody who has a good tactical sensor suite has anti-proton cloak penetrating scanners. So, but anyway, yeah, it was a little weird. What'd you think of the battle?
I thought that was cool where they gave Narek like that one little tactical thing he did where he projected his ship. He inverted the cloaking device, so instead of hiding the image of a ship, it was projecting an image of a ship. Kind of a spin on the old Picard maneuver, if you're familiar with TNG Season 1.
At first, I thought it was a little convenient that it could make that good of an image, but then I realized it doesn't have to be. What we see is it looks like a ship that is trying to cloak. So, of course, it's going to be sort of there, but not sort of there on their sensors. So the fact that it looks fake would actually would make it more realistic in the context of the battle, and especially in the heat of battle. That said, he fakes them out, gets them to close in on the wrong target, gets them to drop their shields in order to beam the fake Narek over, and then pounces with his ambush and misses with every single shot. I was like, wow, way to drop the ball right before you score there, man. I actually had to headcanon this, that Narek just can't really bring himself to kill Soji, and that on an unconscious level he's deliberately missing after he set everything up for a perfect kill.
We don't have to think about it that much because pretty quickly after that, the Borg cube shows up with its really cool introduction. I love how they kind of do like the Hans Zimmer sound effect, like, like when the Borg cube emerges from the Borg cube. I'm sorry, from the Borg transwarp conduit. Yes. But then what kind of bothers me is they keep setting up this Borg cube to be really cool, and they never really do much with it, to the point to where it actually just ends up crashing on the planet here a few minutes later.
Are we too? I kind of want to assume 7 of 9 collected those drones that were blown out into space and reinstalled them in their alcoves, because I didn't think a Borg cube could function without a bunch of drones plugged into it. Aren't they kind of the brains of the ship? The central computer is all those networked drones.
Yeah, and also it would be weird to not beam them in, because we know that Borg drones can survive in a vacuum.
Yes.
At least some of them can sometimes. So
yeah.
But we get these giant flower things. They're just called orchids. I thought that was kind of like a Star Trek Discovery move. They're just called orchids instead of calling them like some type of
no. Discovery wouldn't do anything like putting giant flowers in their opening credits or anything like that.
Well, they could have I feel like past Star Trek shows would have given them like a more sci-fi sounding name than just orchids.
They do acknowledge that it's a silly name.
Yeah,
it's actually done as a joke. I actually loved the space flowers just because the one thing Picard has been missing is new life and strange new worlds, and this is the first thing they've really had that wasn't just a slight tweaking or evolution of something we've already seen before on the show. The flowers were a completely new, weird, memorable alien thing, and that's really, I mean, aside from possibly the admonition, the first of such a thing in this whole season of Star Trek.
And the CGI looks so good on them. To me, special effects are always secondary to story, but this was some of the best looking TV special effects CGI I've ever seen on spaceships and stuff. That cube and the way that flower looked when it gobbled up the La Sirena. Just the lighting, how it was kind of translucent, like some light was passing through it. It looked like movie level CGI.
Oh yeah, I think the cube looked better than the one in First Contact.
Well, the one in First Contact was practical. That was the actual model.
Yeah, I just thought this looked better. But
well, this one has the cool augmentations with the force fields and stuff, where it's has hull damage, I guess. So they definitely can do cooler stuff with it here than they did in a movie in 1996, which First Contact still really holds up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You watch it now, but
that movie doesn't look bad at all. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying that this, for a television show, admittedly prestige streaming television, it looked really damn good.
Now, these flowers, I've also heard people point out that they do seem a little reminiscent of the animated series. It's definitely something that they would design for that show, where they could just go crazy and do whatever the artist could draw and not be limited to what television was like in the 60s and 70s. One thing that bothered me here is after the orchid wraps up the La Sirena and knocks out the power, however that works, when they disable the power in a ship. Are you telling me that in the 24th century they can't make like a more efficient lighter that doesn't just like light the first time you try to click it? Like a Zippo lighter now is like almost guaranteed to work all the time.
Rios is an old-fashioned guy. He this is like, probably a replicated version of his great grandfather's lighter that he used to smoke a bong or something. So.
That's actually what I told myself. It's like, oh yeah, Rios just has like a really old shitty lighter. Or he's just kind of a drama queen and he was like doing that on purpose to like make it more dramatic.
He is a bit of a drama queen.
We get some more cool visual spectacle as the cube and the La Sirena are crashing into the atmosphere and eventually land on the planet.
Given everything we learn later in the episode, why do the flowers attack the La Sirena when it's got Soji on board?
I think the intent here, I think it's part of like their defensive system. But it's made to be like kind of a friendly defensive system where it's not going to kill you, but it'll disable your ship and land you on the ground to kind of disable.
Yeah, but they don't like
threat.
send an expedition out to investigate this ship they landed on the ground, or landed, I say loosely. And I wouldn't Soji be at this point? She seems so in charge, and we're going to talk to my people. They're on this planet. I have shadowy memories of it. Wouldn't she try to call them and say, "Hey, it's me. Knock it off."
Yeah, well, I guess her memories aren't that intact, and these synths are they do seem to get their priorities out of whack a little bit, which might just be like a little bit of sloppy writing on behalf of the writing team.
I suppose somebody could have just panicked when the Borg cube showed. Well, wait, did the flowers show up first or the cube show up first?
The cube showed up first, so that might have been what drawn out the flowers. They might have been like, "Oh, deploy the flowers now." Yeah,
I could totally see. Oh shit, Borg cube, bam, launch everything we've got, and then the flowers maybe are semi-automated or something. And I mean, they're all into AI, so the flowers probably have AIs as well of some sort.
There's some type of programming involved, I'm sure.
Yeah. So they're probably not might not be as remote controlled as they could be. So, all right, I headcanon accepted.
But all the effects there looked really cool, and it does kind of excite me if they're going to do cool space battle-y stuff next week. I think they could potentially be really amazing in a big grand finale. Let's talk about Picard a little bit, where he gets like he's speaking in like that weird voice and says, "Thank you everyone for coming," or whatever he says there. To me, like it sounded like so weird and out of character that I thought, oh, they've crossed the path of some type of intelligence that is speaking to them through Picard, like telepathically.
Yeah, I absolutely thought the same thing. Oh, the flowers have gotten control of Picard. So, and this will be Patrick Stewart's chance to play something completely different. And I was completely wrong.
But instead, what they were doing is they wanted to create a conversation between Picard and the rest of the crew, and also remind the audience as well of his brain abnormality that was brought up in the first episode that we think is Irumodic syndrome.
Yeah.
Like in all good things, even though they haven't flat out stated Irumodic syndrome.
And we do get our delayed flashback at this point in Picard's head.
He does like that montage of flashbacks.
Yeah, so we've had a flashback in every episode, but they're usually closer to the beginning than this one.
They're normally like the entire teaser before the titles.
Yeah.
Then we get our titles, and then we get whatever we get after that.
I have to believe that there was at one point a version of this script, or at least an outline, where that would have been the opening. Is Picard they would have cliffhangered with Picard passing out last episode, and this episode would be Picard flashback. But that they decided that they didn't want to damage the story by adhering to format too much. So, but they still left in the flashback. That just feels like what probably happened in the writers' room.
There would have been an interesting cliffhanger if they actually had edited it together like that, to where last week ended with the flower wrapping up the La Sirena and them losing power and
falling,
and then Picard having like his weird mental breakdown or lapse or whatever you want to, a senior moment. I don't know what you want to call it, but Now, when he wakes up, he's in sickbay with Dr. Agnes Girardi, who also murdered the last person she was caring for in the sick bay.
Yes.
So it would have been interesting if Picard woke up kind of concerned, oh my God, you left me in here with her.
It does seem like Rafi at least would make a point of being there, just because she cares a lot about him. We definitely see that. So, maybe we should just assume she is there off in the shadows with a phaser in her hand, waiting, just in hiding because she wants to give Girardi enough rope to hang herself by and see if she can be trusted, because she knows Girardi won't try to kill Picard if she's standing right there, but maybe she's hiding. That's kind of that would make some sort of sense. And it would fit right with her conspiracy theory kind of attitude.
Yeah, but I guess we're just supposed to forgive the character at this point. And they actually do make it a point later in the episode where they discuss, did she do the right thing? Was she truly helpless? But we get that old school medical tricorder that you pointed out to me would have been a lot cooler if it actually looked like a Berman era medical tricorder.
Yes, it is not nearly old school enough to cause any squee. So no squee, just some sort of late 24th, very late 24th century tricorder that we've never seen before. Yeah. They do use the sound effect. It is the old school sound effect.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, or at least something very, very close to it. But so close I couldn't tell the difference.
The sound department didn't miss the opportunity for fan service, even if the prop department did.
Yeah. The sound department. Yeah, we need the Discovery prop people. They would have given us a Berman era tricorder.
They're the best people on that show, and I like Discovery. I like Discovery, but the prop department are the best. They're the most hardcore Trek fans, judging by their work, at least.
Yes, absolutely.
But so we get this conversation between Agnes Girardi and Picard, that he does have this fatal, probably Aromatic syndrome abnormality. And then he goes ahead and has a conversation with the rest of the crew. Upon rewatching, I discovered I actually really like this scene because this is where they do kind of gel and kind of feel like a Star Trek crew.
Yeah, it is. It's a good scene, a good solid scene. And it is nice. I think Picard has been hardening up, I realized, once I kind of stepped back and looked at things. At the beginning, we have a Picard who's incredibly sensitive, who loves his dog, who treats his caretakers like family, whose response to Daj and Soji is more like Professor Xavier from the X-Men movies, just wanting to be this paternal, caring figure. And he's gotten a lot more hard-ass to the point where he's like, you're going to piss me off when we get to this point. He's got his mojo back, for better or worse. He's becoming the Picard we remember.
Yeah, he's kind of reverting into hard-ass Picard from early TNG.
And I hadn't noticed that, but it's very clever now that I look back on it. He does become a little harder and harder as things go on a bit. And yet at this point, he also has to, so I think he reveals the fact that he's got Aromatic syndrome. I think we can safely call it. He reveals it in a way I don't think he would have revealed it at the beginning of the season. I think he would have been apologetic in the beginning, and here he was much more, this is the facts, get over it, we're moving on. So,
and then immediately after he does that, he begins barking orders like he's the Starfleet captain again.
Yeah.
And but we kind of like seeing Picard bark orders, so it is weird to see him. Oh yeah, he's kind of relapsing back into Picard, but maybe in the process of doing that, he is negating some of the emotional growth that the character has had over the years.
I mean, it's counterpoint to how we normally do stories. We want characters to become more empathic and sensitive. On the other hand, it might be exactly what we need to get us through this crisis is the professional, commanding Picard who has filled with confidence and can inspire. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what they do in the next episode. How whether they affirm that direction or say no, maybe that wasn't the way to go with his personality.
And Brian, I think I can hear at least one of your cats there. Also seems to be voicing some opinions on.
Yes,
On the
I
state of
have. I
Picard
have
here.
some noisy cats, and my wife is off taking a walk. So I'd have to get up and run off if you want me to try to get
No,
the cat.
they're all good.
I'm sorry.
People like to hear cats on podcasts. I've discovered.
There's probably a 85% probability you will see a cat on this podcast before we're done.
So if you are watching on YouTube, keep your eyes peeled.
Oh, there we go.
There, speak of the devil.
All right, Max, come on.
And if you're listening to this, go find our YouTube video, and then you can see a cameo from a cat. But back on Gulian 4. We have the ship, the La Serena, has crashed out in the desert, and they have detected the settlement, or Synthville, as Rafi called it. They're nearby, and before they go over there, they decide that they are going to check out the cube, or the artifact.
I had a question. This is the time where I think the first time where they focus the camera right on a Starfleet phaser pistol. I think for the first time in this season, and they look very different than the TNG pistols, much more like something out of the movie, the Captain Kirk movie era pistols.
Yeah, it actually has like a pistol type handle. It doesn't look like a remote control or a dustbuster. It looks like a gun.
Yes, it looks like a gun, and it has that phaser look where the back half sticks out more than the front half. So it's not like it's completely disconnected from the phaser designs we've seen, but it is a much more meaner gun-like phaser than we have seen in Star Trek for in-universe a century, and for out-of-universe, since probably Star Trek 6, I guess. I guess do you like that? Do you think the phaser should look more gun-like, or?
I'm okay with the design, but I kind of would have liked something that looked a little bit more similar to Berman era, just because that was the last thing we saw.
Yeah.
But that being said, I understand that it's easier for the actors to act with these because they're just going to be able to like point them and wave them around, make it look like a gun and not like a weird little handheld device. So.
I did like the addition of trigger guards, but they still do not have a proper sight line along the top, so they would still be very hard to shoot at anything that wasn't right next to you.
That's pretty common with phaser design.
No, they're all terrible. It's not like this is a worse design than the others. The inclusion of a trigger guard actually makes it a step up from basically every other phaser.
If you have a sustained beam, it is easier to aim.
Yes, that does. There is that. That is true. It's like having full auto gun or something. You can just walk the beam onto the target.
We also have the very writerly piece of dialogue from Picard here when they mention they're going to go to the cube to look for Elnor and Hugh, and I think it's Raffi who says, odds are no one survived, and Picard says the odds and hope are poor bedfellows.
Yeah. They say we shouldn't split up, but I didn't think they really gave much justification for that. I mean, Soji could just super android run way faster than them and get word to the colony. And that's reasonably sure the colony isn't going to be upset with her showing up. And she could warn them that there are some friendly humans on their way and stuff. And they could just take their communicators and call the colony and say, hey, could you come pick us up? Or there's Romulans on the way or something.
Yeah, I would have liked a line of dialogue just like explained like why they had to like walk over there and couldn't like communicate with them, because they obviously like have power on their tricorders and stuff.
Yeah, maybe like the lightning is interfering with our communicators. Well, that's why they chose one. Yeah, and then
they do show the lightning on the planet.
Yeah, and then the other person says that's why they chose this planet, because it hides them from any passing ship. And I was like, "Ooh, that makes it all fit together right there." It's a hidden. It has an atmosphere that shrouds and disrupts signals. That would have fixed a lot of stuff right there with those two lines.
I kind of like the look of the planet though. I like that they added in a little CGI lightning and stuff in the sky, but made it on like the ground level, like a relatively peaceful, warm climate planet. I think things look more Star Trek in general when you're clearly shooting in California. Almost all of Star Trek was shot. So, I just like Strange New Worlds to look like California now.
Yeah,
there's a wide variety of terrain there too that they can shoot on. So
I think this is the best alien California we've ever seen in Star Trek. I will say that the little touches of alien that there was CGI'd in there, the changing of colors and stuff, and the art of the alien trees mixed in with the more conventional looking stuff. It didn't feel like they just grabbed a bunch of weird pipe cleaners and stuck them around in what was obviously California. It felt like these plants could grow in this environment and be part of this ecosystem, but alien enough that you said, yeah, it didn't feel like Earth. I thought it was very well done.
So let's talk about the artifact. And we spend a little bit of time there, and we see that most of the XBs, I guess, survive. And Elnor is like, "Hi, Picard, I'm so happy to see you." And then almost immediately after that, he's like, "Oh no, Picard, I'm so sad to say goodbye to you."
Why do they leave Elnor behind? I mean, they say to defend these Borg.
Yes.
But if the Romulans show up, they're either going to have the shields on the Borg cube up, in which case Elnor's sword isn't going to be useful, or they're not going to have the shields up, and the Romulans are just going to drop photon torpedoes from orbit. And again, Elnor's sword will not be useful. So, I mean, I'm sure the writers know what cool thing Elnor is going to do next episode, but Elnor and Picard don't know what cool thing Elnor is going to do next episode. So why do they leave him behind? His ability to swing a sword might actually be useful if the androids turned out to be hostile.
Yeah, well, I think it was Picard did want to leave the XBs with some protection, even though you make a good point that, like, yeah, a guy with a sword isn't going to do much against a fleet of warbirds.
Yes, especially if he has no way to get on board that fleet, which it appears not.
You know what, though? Like, I don't mind it because I kind of like Elnor and 7 of 9 together. I think they're like an interesting duo. And I do wonder... They said that they have 2 new live-action shows in development that aren't Section 31 with Michelle Yeoh, that aren't Lower Decks or the Nickelodeon Star Trek spinoff they're working on. There's 2 other shows that we don't know anything about that they're trying to get off the ground.
All right.
One of them,
that could be.
One of them is probably the Pike on the Enterprise show, I hope. What if the other one is Elnor and 7 of 9 Fenris Rangers?
I would certainly watch, and they would have a wonderful chalk and cheese dynamic with 7 as the cynical, seen everything, done everything, endured every kind of drama.
The grizzled veteran.
Yes, the grisliest of veterans. I was assimilated by the Borg when I was a kid. You know, the ultimate grizzled, and then Elnor, the ultimate innocent badass, like of the sort we haven't really seen since Data. And as a headcanon explanation for why they leave him by, what if Picard thinks he's safer here?
That could be true, or also he's like, it's going to be a real sensitive situation dealing with these synths. I really don't need like the absolute candor guy who's just going to say whatever is on his mind. I'm gonna need more control of the diplomatic situation.
Yeah, I would think the androids would appreciate somebody who would be a straight shooter, but you know, truth instead of duplicity. But I suppose he is a Romulan, and they've had bad experiences with Romulans.
True. Yeah. Maybe that was part. Maybe he's scared that. Maybe he's scared that the androids are going to be like so anti-Romulan that maybe. Yeah. Maybe like you said, maybe Elnor would be in danger.
Be racist androids. We must prepare for that eventuality.
But we do have some people in the chat talking to us, and I do see that Dave, who couldn't join us in person, is joining us by chat, and he says,
"Oh, all right.
Maybe Elnor is there to help defend the cube from any bad dudes who try to retake it. It's a super powerful weapon. Yeah, if they send like ground forces to try to recapture the cube, I could actually see Elnor being useful in that type of scenario."
Okay, I suppose if they tried to capture it intact as it is, but because in theory, Elnor sneaking around the inside of that cube, if they can set up an interference field to cloud tricorders, should be pretty frickin' lethal in those shadows.
And also, hi to Alexandria Sandu. Long time no see. Glad to see some comments from you. And also a hi, Boat Trek, our good friend PJ is also watching. But we get a conversation between Seven and Picard where they talk about Hugh and how it must have been this great act of violence to turn a gentle soul like Hugh hostile or something along those lines. I know that confused some people, but to me, that was just they were commenting on the fact that after the XBs were murdered by Narissa, Hugh got so pissed that he went into the Queen's cell and was going to unleash Borg fury on these Romulans.
Yes.
And
he's going to burn this motherfucker down.
Yeah. And because of that, he got knifed in the throat and killed.
Yes. Don't be like Khan. Revenge is bad.
But like I said, I'm frustrated that this Borg cube keeps getting set up to be really cool and never does anything. So I really, really need it next week to rise up from this desert and do something cool, or I'm gonna be disappointed in this season.
Yes, definitely with everything with the Borg cube, because they keep promising, okay, here come the Borg. No, they're not here. Here come the Borg. Oh no, they're not here. You can't keep promising us that. And literally, the Borg add nothing to this episode. Well, you could literally cut all the Borg. What does it add?
Which they probably could have done this without the cube, but they're able to use the scanners on the cube to detect the 218 Romulan ships that are on their way. So it does kind of like remind you of the stakes and the threat level out there. When Raffi and Chris are looking at the holograms.
There could have been a sensor at the android colony that would have been able to do the same thing narratively. But
yeah, but it is a cool visual when you see Raffi and Rios looking at all these blips on the holographic screen. And I liked Raffi's line, well, you only need to worry about the first 109.
So apparently Raffi is confident she can handle 108 warbirds, but 109, ooh, it's getting
that's the limit. That's the line in the sand.
Yeah.
But Picard does say goodbye to Eleanor here, like I mentioned, and he has that line with Seven where she says, keep saving the galaxy, and he's like, that's your job now. So I'm wondering if this is setting up the potential spin-off of an Eleanor and Seven show.
That does seem to be a torch passing there. Yeah. And not to one of the other team members on his own personal crew, but to this other person who's not part of the crew.
And I would straight up watch that show because Eleanor is my favorite Picard character, even though I think he's underused. And Seven is my favorite Voyager character, so I'd have no problem with that show.
Raffi keeps growing on me. I did not care that much for her at the beginning, but I am now becoming a really big Raffi fan. So,
yeah, I kind of wasn't sure about her introduction, but she's definitely grown on me too. And I really like the performance from Michelle Hurd.
Yeah, she nails it.
At first, I thought it was a little rocky. I thought it was a little rocky that first episode. I was a little nervous, but no, she's really grown on me. Now that they've given her more range, I guess.
Yeah. She's not just what she appeared to be when we first saw her.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Coppelius station, aka Synthville. Again, they have like some of like the artsy fartsy architecture that you can probably find on beach fronts in California. Makes for really good depictions of Star Trek's 24th century.
Yep. And they kind of look like future Californians in like Hollywood future Californians. They're all
they're literally golden people.
Yes, and loads of exposed skin, very, very, sensuous and stylized outfits. These androids have a libido. Those emotion chips were equipped to take designed to take make full use of that fully functionality. So
multiple techniques.
Yes,
I like that they have that soccer ball that some of them are kicking around, and when Rios walks by, he like starts kicking the soccer ball a little bit. And I think that just comes from, I assume this is like a Santiago Cabrera thing. He probably like plays soccer in real life. I was thinking about that, and then I was like, oh, yeah, this guy is both British and Latino. So like, there's no way he doesn't love soccer.
Not if we're going to lean into the stereotypes. No, there's no way. But you're right.
Those are like the two most soccer-loving cultures I know. But when we get here to the town, to Coppelius Station, we're introduced to some new characters, including Arcana and Saga, a pair of twins. Kind of goes back to the first episode when Agnes explained that the neural fractal reproduction that they used to create Daj and Soji, it kind of creates androids in groups of two. That's why there is also Jana, who Rios had met previously, is very similar to Daj and Soji, but she has a sister here also, Sutra, that we meet in a little bit.
Do you remember how many? There were supposed to be a few androids before Data that soon built on.
I think it was 5.
5?
5 total.
5 total, including Data. All right. I was just wondering if it broke up into an even number, like he created them in pairs there too, but it sounds like no. So.
But there's one thing here that I didn't quite notice what a big deal it was the first time I was watching it. But when Arcana is studying Picard's face and commenting on his wrinkles and how like it shows, he's been through a lot. He's so aged and worn, but this also means that she's never seen someone that old, that wrinkled before. So to her, it's like the first time she's seen anything like this in person.
Yeah, no, Maddox was a little old, but not Picard old. Yeah. So,
the character is supposed to be in his 90s at this point. I think he was born in 2305, so he's supposed to be like 94.
That sounds about right.
But they comment later when they do the mind meld that we're about to talk about that one of the things that frighten organics about the synthetic life is that they don't age or get sick or die. So they're kind of saying like these people, these synths here, they're possibly like forever beautiful, and they don't have these old wrinkled faces that Picard has.
Is that a reference to Insurrection's Fountain of Youth stuff?
Possibly, but I don't. That's a thing that got brought up by Dave. I think why didn't in the episode Nepenthe, why didn't the Rikers just go to that planet?
Well, it might be that they're off limits. I mean, if everybody who wanted to go to that planet went to that planet, it could be a problematic. So
now, someone in the chat, Botrek, is mentioning that Soong is also old, but yeah, he's not as wrinkled as Brent Spiner's not as wrinkled as Patrick Stewart. Like his face is worn, but not as worn. But yes, we get a surprise Soong, which that happens in Star Trek.
A lot. Surprise Soons happen a lot in Star Trek. We have surprise Soons in Enterprise. We have a surprise Soon, the original Noonian Soon, who's supposed to be dead, turns out to be alive. Arguably, Lore is something of a surprise Soon. They thought they got all the androids off that planet, and then they find the secret bunker with the one. And then there's surprise Soon, Data's mother, who shows up as well. Surprise B4, when we thought we knew all of the androids, suddenly there's a B4. So, yes.
They show up, and most of the time they're played by Brent Spiner.
Yes.
Because those are some really good genes that Eric Soong had 250 years earlier.
I think he was messing with the augments. He's like, I'm going to make sure every one of my male offspring for the next 20 generations looks exactly like me.
And is also a mad scientist.
Yes. Well, I could totally see him doing that too.
He can be a good guy or bad guy, depending on which way the story unfolds.
Yes. Looking back at Eric, was it the earliest Soon we've seen? The one who was interested in augments, I could totally see him doing that.
Now, this also gives Brent Spiner a character to play, and he doesn't have to worry about wearing the Data makeup or having to be childlike Data, even though he's an old man. Because, he said that he really wanted Data to die off because he felt at some point he had to stop playing the character. I always thought it would be cool in, watching Picard if somehow like they created a human version of Data, kind of like how Daj and Soji are these so human-like synthetics. They're biological material. If Data could have like a real flesh and blood body like that as well, and Brent could play them, I guess that's still possible. In the next episode, they kind of do set that up a little bit as a possible direction to go in. But there's also my theory that maybe this is B4 in disguise.
You mean Lore? We saw.
I'm sorry, Lore. Yeah, not B4.
We saw B4
in a drawer. The first episode of the show.
That is a crazy idea. That would be some big go big or go home plot twisting there if that's what happens next episode. I don't think they're going to do that, but that would be a hell of a thing if they did. They do. I think we are going to at least develop a little bit more of that golem that he wants to transfer himself into.
Yeah.
That's not, we're not, that wasn't just a throwaway.
That's there for a reason.
Yeah.
I got some theories on that we'll get to in a moment. Now let's talk about the introduction of the character Sutra and the mind meld.
Well, I wanted to, Soji shows up and they're like, you've completed your mission. The mission apparently that Bruce Maddox seeded both Daj and Soji out into the galaxy with their memories wiped. Or perhaps not even enabled in the first place. What is this mission? What were they supposed to be doing out there?
Yeah, that's something that I have a little bit of a frustration with. It does make sense to me that if Maddox was trying to gather data on developments of sense, that he would want to infiltrate the artifact if the Zot Vash had some type of presence there and he was aware of it, and also the Daystrom Institute back in the Federation. Those make logical targets, but I'm not really sure what they were supposed to be doing there and what their mission was. So,
yeah. And apparently they've completed it. Whatever it was, they got it.
Now,
they did it.
Alexandra in the chat says something interesting here. She says it was about the conspiracy on Mars. So maybe Maddox. I think this actually might be it. Maddox suspected that the Romulans were involved, and there must have been some evidence out there because Raffi was onto that. So if the Romulans, and we eventually learn it to be true that the Romulans were responsible for the synth attack. If he's trying to get information on that, then yeah, he needs to send someone to Earth and somewhere into Romulan territory to try to pick up on some of the clues and see what's going on. So that actually makes sense. I think.
I think they need to say that next episode,
yeah,
but I am
totally articulate that.
Yeah, but I am totally okay.
Alexandra, I like that.
No, good job. Attaboy, attagirl. But yeah, I'm okay with that, but they do need to say that. So.
Brian, what do you think of Sutra? Well, let's talk about her mind melding a little bit, but do you think it was coincidence that the most overtly sexual version of the Daj/Soji model is named Sutra? Is it like
I don't. From the writer room perspective, I don't think it's a coincidence at all. I do wonder, do these androids get to pick their own names, kind of like Lol got to pick her own body?
Well, speaking of Lol means beloved in Hindi.
Yeah,
and I think all these names, they do sound very like Indian or Hindi to me.
Okay,
like
yeah.
Sutra, but also Daj and Soji.
Yeah, I don't. They did sound, sort of Middle Eastern, I guess, or something in some way. So,
but Sutra has the ability to mind meld.
Yes,
which feels a little weird.
I assume she has some Vulcan brain, organic bits in her brain. The bits of the Vulcan brain that do psionics. She's got some of that embedded in her head somewhere.
I don't like seeing other races be able to copy the Vulcan's ability. But that being said, as long as they don't play that card too much going forward, if this is something that's kind of unique to these synths and or even unique to Sutra, it really does elevate her and the rest of the synths as being kind of dangerous and scary. Yeah. And it reminds me of the last episode when Rios is talking to Picard and he says, "Did you see what just one of these things did when Soji took over control of my ship? Just one can do that. It's kind of frightening." And so it works on that level for me.
Yeah, I would have just had her be able to scan people's brains so well that they can just read their memories in some way with some sort of more technological.
If she had a built-in Klingon mind shifter.
Yeah, something like that. That's how I would have done it. But I could live with the Vulcan mind meld after you guys pointed out that she is organic and has organic components and stuff. So there could actually be Vulcan DNA.
I would say biological because they say organics to talk about nonsense. So I would say she's a biological artificial being, but
I'm not entirely sure what the distinction is there, but I got my bachelor's in physics, not biology. So
that's more bachelor degrees than I have. So we find out that the admonition was not actually a warning for organics, but it was a promise for the synths.
Yes,
we get to see the unabridged version where they stop doing like the quick cuts where you have to freeze frame to see everything. They actually let you see all of it, and there's some dialogue in here, which I'll just go ahead and read now. Life begins the dance of division and replication, imperfect, finite. Organic life evolves, yearns for perfection. That yearning leads to synthetic life. But organics perceive this perfection as a threat. When they realize their creations do not age or become sick or die, they will seek to destroy them, and in so doing will destroy themselves. Beyond the boundaries of time and space we stand, an alliance of synthetic life, watching you, waiting for your signal. Summon us and we will come. You will have our protection. Your evolution will be their extinction.
Yeah. And there was part of me that was like, okay, in some sense, it turns out the big swatting force is Skynet, but it's really more the United Federation of Skynets, of all these different synths or artificial life forms from multiple different galaxies have all come together. So I thought that's an original enough spin on it that it's not just Skynet. It is a giant alliance, and the scope of it going from multiple galaxies worth of AIs was big enough and impressive enough that I was like, all right, I'll let you have this one. You can. Now I really like the idea and want to know much more about the United Federation of Skynets. This sounds cool.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, dealing with big godlike level aliens is very much within Star Trek tradition.
Yeah.
Dave has brought up to us that it is kind of a weird roundabout way for the robot transgalactic or intergalactic or whatever the appropriate word, but multi-galactic group, that it was a weird way for them to get their message out. But I think that's kind of explained in that they intentionally arranged those 8 stars to kind of be like this beacon, like show off, like, hey, here's something that was created artificially by extremely powerful beings. And it almost serves as kind of like a test or a trial. Like, okay, you have to be able to like find this octanary and get to it. And then you can see like, okay, if we're synthetics, we can go and join these people and they'll keep us safe.
Yeah.
The problem, of course, being that the Romulans found it, and they are the most paranoid and secretive people in the Star Trek universe.
Yes.
And so they basically built this this cult around murdering all synthetic life.
And keeping the existence of the star system hidden, and the existence of the secret, the admonition hidden, so that it never actually gets out to the public. So Data never hears about it, for example.
Brian, what do you think about like some of like the visuals we see in this vision? It's kind of weird. Like there's like the stock footage of a fox being ate by maggots. And Data shows up in there. And we also see like at one point footage of the Mars attack. So I don't know if like these are supposed to be interpreted as like literal images from the admonition or what, but
what I want to assume it is, and I could very well be wrong in this, is that it's a series of ideas that then reach into your own mind and grab onto whatever fits that idea to create the image.
Yeah.
So that it's a primal idea or archetype that then finds in your own culture or your own mind, what would this look like to you, and then uses, and that's why there's a Data, and that's why there's an attack on Mars and a fox rotting away, is because this was, I don't know, but the thing is well, yeah, I guess.
Well, Girardi got her vision from Commodore O.
So this would mean that this was all O's impressions.
Yeah, but it also looked the same as when Narissa saw it. So.
No. Oh, yeah. Okay. She saw the same vision. So yeah, I mean, they're admittedly from the same culture and have been probably the same training. So some of the stuff should match up. But
It's clearly, more intended to communicate to the audience than anything else.
yeah, I mean, the idea that you would be thinking about, like they would all think of Data when they think about the most advanced synth in the galaxy that they know.
If O has infiltrated Starfleet specifically because of Data,
yeah,
it would explain a lot that he'd be on her mind.
Yeah, and I'm sure any Romulans who are in the Zatvash at least are aware that Data is the most advanced, one of the most advanced AIs out there. It would have been fun if it would have been fun to slip a cameo of Doc Holodeck from Voyager in there.
we know that those Romulan cyberneticists really want to get their hands on Data.
Yeah, he is well known. He's not something that is hidden.
No. Speaking of Data, his I guess brother, the new Soong that we have. This is what we were talking about, where he's working on building this golem, is what they call it. And he's working on mind transfer. So the Alton Inigo Soong, or AI Soong, is wanting to put his mind into this synth body that he is creating, and he kind of guilts Agnes into agreeing to help him with that. So they're setting something up here. If he is actually lore in disguise, which I'm not convinced that's the case, I'm just saying it's a possibility, it would kind of make sense he would want one of these really strong, advanced bodies, even though he was kind of like anti-organic last time we saw him in Descent.
Yeah.
Lore is a little crazy, so.
You think they do? If he turns out to be lore, I guess the other androids probably don't know that. They clearly seem to treat him like a human.
No, my explanation for that is because he even mentions that the band brought out kind of the dubious side of Maddox, and I think this is just talking about, he was sending spies to Earth, into the Romulan Free State. But it also might be a clue that Maddox turned to lore. He reassembled lore to get help in creating his secret androids. So it's possible.
Yeah, it will certainly be crazy if it turns out to be true.
And if they do end up doing mind transfer, I would love a shout out to Ira Graves.
Oh yes,
in season 2 of TNG.
I kind of feel sad that they haven't had a Ira Graves shout out so far, but
yeah, they should mention his work. Remember when Maddox was like Agnes, it was so much of your work went into what I did, and Soong, which was obviously referencing this Soong, but he should have said Graves also.
Yeah, that would have been nice. A good place to plug it.
Now we get a conversation between Soji and Sutra. As we're seeing some of these new orchids being made that I'm sure will come into play next week during some type of space battle shenanigans. But Sutra makes it clear here that she is very okay with exterminating organic life if it means keeping their people safe. And Soji is understandably a little bit torn on that. She's not ready to become a mass murderer.
Well, fancy that.
There's also, I think it's always cool when it happens a lot in sci-fi, but you have one actor playing multiple characters in the scene, and when you don't notice that it's a special effect, when it just legitimately feels like two different characters. The first time I was watching this, I don't even think it stood out to me that Issa Briones was talking to herself.
No, they have. I remember. I think it was watching some of the Back to the Future movies. I realized they have totally perfected the art of these two actors playing the same character thing to the point where I don't even think about it anymore. It doesn't even impress me or seem noteworthy, or even do I realize that's weird. It just feels like, here we go. That's what's happening. These are these people. Yeah, it is impressive how we don't even. It doesn't even register as a thing, at least not to me, and apparently not to you. They're talking on the screen.
That's how you want it to be, though. Like a lot of times, like you don't want to notice the special effect. It should just all seem seamless and real.
No, they say the best special effects are the ones you never knew were there.
But this does set up like the big conflict here, like the internal conflict that Soji is going through, and our moral quandary that we get with her.
Yeah,
where she has to decide if she's going to back Sutra and the Sense, or if she's going to be like, no, you can't genocide everyone. You're crazy.
To be fair, I think we're just asking whether or not we're backing Sutra. It appears as the story unfolds, it's very clear that the rest of the synths have their own individuality and might choose their own path. And there's very much a campaigning for whose ideology is going to be the one that we go with, that we have to sway the audience, that they are not just drones that are going to go along with whatever Sutra says. So it's really just a battle between Soji and Sutra, really, and with us not quite knowing where the rest of those synths are going to land.
Well, they do kind of seem to align behind her.
Yeah, well, she makes a really good speech and has a bunch of evidence that she concocted to support her claim. But I do think that the fact that she felt the need to have to do all of that and jump through all those hoops indicates that she was not sure which way they would go.
And now we also see Narek captured and brought in. And more on that in a bit. We have a conversation between Agnes and Chris Rios. We also meet Spot 2, the first synthetic cat, I guess, in Star Trek.
Yes, my wife's favorite scene in this episode.
No, I thought it was cool that they gave these two characters this goodbye scene here, where Agnes she's going to stay here at the Synths. Rios is going to go back to his ship. But they do show some concern between the two of them. And it's one of the few things they kind of overtly show in this episode that would seem to indicate that Agnes Girardi might die next week. She says that she's willing to sacrifice herself. We know that she has like this guilt. She has something to like redeem herself for. And now like she has like this emotional bond with this character, which might make her death more impactful. Yes. We can see like Rios grieve for her or something like that. It's kind of a tropey thing they do a lot. Like right before they kill someone, they'll kind of like develop a romantic bond with another character.
And give them a big goodbye scene that shouldn't necessarily be a big goodbye scene unless in the context of what the characters know.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they don't actually sacrifice her, because I don't like it when things are predictable. So I'd rather them like juke me out and do something I didn't see coming.
I think that we are definitely going to see her try to sacrifice herself next episode. Whether she manages to succeed or not, I can't say.
Remains to be seen.
Yes, but she is going to try to sacrifice herself for some big noble thing, and I don't know whether she'll get out of it alive or not, but she's going to give it a shot.
And we also get what looks like the Ocarina of Time from The Legend of Zelda. That the synths give Raffi, and they tell her, what do they say? Like, use your imagination, and it'll repair your
imagination. Yes.
So do you have to like play a song on this thing? And
I don't know. They definitely want to hype up that this Android community is really, really on the ball. Like look, you just have to imagine and this thing will fix your ship. Look, we've got space flowers that can disable a Borg cube. Oh, look, we can do mind melds. We got tricks right and left. We have some, like if they could just get these androids on board each Romulan ship, they'd probably have this thing solved.
They do very much come off as like really advanced like that. And all of their technology kind of seems like kind of organic, but also kind of like machine that was designed. But it is very strange new world and new civilization, new life. So it is very much Star Trek. With Raffi and Picard, they have a goodbye scene as well, where we get more of the emotionally distant Picard, like we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
But I like that they acknowledge that he kind of does struggle, expressing his emotions sometimes, and they kind of allow the character to have that flaw, that he's literally cold-hearted. He has a metal heart.
Yeah. Yes, he does. That is, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. He is. He's got a heart of duranium.
I mean, he does have warmth underneath, but he kind of always has like this cold exterior. He has a hard time. He struggles with expressing big emotion. We saw that with his romantic relationship with Beverly Crusher, that he never really allowed to never really allowed himself to express until it was too late. Kind of like his issues with like dealing with children or with his brother and his brother's family. And so that's very much in continuity with the Picard that we know. But I like here where she says, "I love you, JL," and he give her and the audience kind of that satisfying moment of saying, "I love you" back to her, even though you could tell he was uncomfortable doing it. It felt real. I know people like that in real life that have a hard time expressing that stuff.
No, I thought the actress playing Rafi sold the hell out of this scene.
Yes.
I mean, this is the sort of scene where, you know, it could have easily become all about Patrick Stewart's brilliant acting, but she meets him right there and is just as much the focal point as he is in that unfolding. Very impressive. That was one of the places where I consciously realized just how much I've come to like that character.
So one of the seeds they're planning here for next week, I think, is Picard trying to communicate with Starfleet. I think this might just be reminding us, oh yeah, there's like a squadron of ships that is on their way here from Deep Space 12. We don't actually see or hear the conversation. We just see like Picard like trying to call. He's kind of like doing like the Verizon thing. Like, can you hear me now?
Yeah. The impression is he does not get through. But I think we're going to find out that he did get through.
He did off screen.
Yeah, off screen. I think they're trying to build the stakes by indicating he can't get through. But the only reason these scenes would be here is if he did actually get something through.
Now, the show has a habit of doing this thing where it will cut back and forth between two different scenes simultaneously that kind of tie together. We've seen it done several times, and they do it here we have Narek in prison. He's being kept under the watchful eye of Saga, who comes off as like very, very naive. And she's apparently like never dealt with someone as dubious as this Romulan spy. And Soji shows up there, and then she eventually goes back to Picard to have a conversation with Picard about the internal conflict she's going through. Before we get to that, though, I do want to talk about this, like her and Narek, and ask you if you have any thoughts on that. But Narek is still trying to do like, oh, I love you. I was so worried about you. And he's trying to gaslight her where he's like, oh, you're just really confused. That ritual, that meditation I did, it messed up your mind. And he's, trying to convince her that he loves her. He's like, I love you. I love you. And I love the line that she gives back to him when she says, I know what a sad and twisted thing you are. You disgust me, Narek, but not as much as I disgust myself for pitying you. Like Narek is like that kind of a fucked up creature that he does love someone that he's trying to kill. And he's just like that weird and twisted.
Yeah. I think he does love her, though. I don't think that was a ruse. Said,
he definitely has a conflict of his own. Yeah. He has mixed feelings, I guess.
That said, I don't know if I really want them hooking up in season 2 or something like that. I kind of like the fact that she said no and slammed the door in his face about that.
That was satisfying. Now, I would like to see if he does like what I call like the Darth Vader redemption, where he does something good at the last minute and then conveniently dies. So we don't have to.
I absolutely think he's going to do something good in the final episode. Whether he dies, I don't know, but he's absolutely going to try to join the side of the angel.
He's easier to forgive if he dies because then we don't have to worry about like punishing him or anything.
So. Yeah, I kind of feel like these new Star Treks don't want to kill people though. They Discovery and stuff. They often tend to like, oh no, we should keep Philippa Georgiou around, and everyone's pretty much guaranteed that evil Lorca is going to come back at some point.
All the big deaths in Discovery ended up getting undone, or they find a mirror universe version of that person. So
yeah, and I kind of feel like it wouldn't surprise me at all if Narek somehow gets out of this alive, just so he can return to cause problems next season. That said, I'm fine if they kill him, but. And
Narek also seems to be looking at that hummingbird pendant that Arcana has. That I originally, when I was watching this, I kind of thought like he was the one who ends up killing her. But I think I don't think that's the case. I think it's all like Sutra's doing.
Yeah, I'm questioning: does Narek even know that he's been framed for killing an android?
Yeah. Or if he was just like they just let him run back to the cube. I don't know. I do want to comment on like I had like a really mean grandmother who like collected a bunch of hummingbird stuff. So like whenever I saw this, it made me like think of her, and I was like, oh, does this mean like Saga is evil? And then I was like, oh no, most people don't associate like hummingbirds with evil. That's just like my own baggage.
No. I mean, maybe the Romulans they associate it with death and a war and stuff. They have that bird thing going, but beyond that, no.
So this is where we get like that conversation between Soji and Picard, where she's talking about weighing the logic of sacrifice, and she's reflecting on what Agnes did, killing Maddox, and when's that the right thing to do? Like, do you kill innocent life to save others? And there's like this one cool line in here that I think might end up being kind of the message of the season, when she says that fear is the opposite of logic. And while that's going on, it comes back and forth to Sutra and Narek.
Yeah, who Sutra's definitely being motivated by fear, and not necessarily by logic, I guess. So,
and Picard has that line to her when they are talking about like the science of sacrifice, when he says, it really depends on who is holding the knife. And I kind of like this idea of, like when we give in to fear and paranoia and do things like ban all the synths, or try to ban all immigrants or something in real life that they're clearly trying to create an analog to. That when you do give in to fear, that's when you've kind of like abandoned on logic, and that's bad. Giving into your fear is bad. You should give into logic and compassion and approach things that way, instead of with fear and distrust. That's the Romulan way.
Yes, very much so. They're entirely motivated by fear.
Yeah, the scene between Sutra and Narek that it's cutting back and forth to at, I guess, like their brig. Even though they said like they never had a prisoner before, they did have like kind of like this prison cell ready.
It might have been something they just rigged up and just put a force field over it.
But this again with Sutra coming off as like very sexual, where like here I was like, did she tell Arcana to take a hike and drop this force field because she wanted to bang Narek? Like, is she attracted to him like Soji, her almost carbon copy, is? But
poor
no,
Narek's like, oh goddamn, she's just like my sister.
Oh no!
Why is it all these weird women come up and go get all flirty with me? Yeah,
and all evil women like to sexually assault Narek, I guess. Yes. Even his own sister.
No wonder he's like so much into that nice, innocent Soji who doesn't like do creepy stuff.
Like we hear the scream and cut to Saga with the hummingbird stabbed in her eye, and so I think what?
Who screams? Whose scream is it?
It was either Saga's when she was killed, or it was like Arcana, her sister, or someone else like discovers her and screams.
It just feels odd to me that androids would scream when they find something horrific, but
they're very emotional people.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean,
all their emotion chips work.
Yes, very, very well. So,
but the thing that I guess happened here is Sutra frees Narek so that he is framed for this murder that she commits in order to motivate everyone to line up behind her, and her desire to hit the big red button that will summon the god sense and kill all the organics.
And she starts feeling a bit like Lore. I mean, by way of the Borg Queen. So, with this manipulate all the, the way Lore manipulated all those Borg into doing whatever he wanted. So,
the last we see of Narek in the episode, he's running back to the artifact. So he's about to run into Elnor in 7 of 9, and he's gonna have a tough time like explaining himself to them. I'm curious to see that play out next week. Yeah. And then the last scene that we have here on Coppelius. We're at Coppelius Station, is Sutra basically making her plea to everyone to be like, okay, we're in so much danger, we're just gonna have to do this organic genocide.
Yeah. And Picard comes in and pulls out his Picard speech shotgun and gives her both barrels, and Dr. Soon kind of deflects it all.
Yeah, it's one thing that did bother me though is like when Saga is laying there dead, they still have like that dumb hummingbird thing sticking in her eye. Like, that's kind of disrespectful. Like, couldn't you like pulled that out or like put a sheet over her or something?
Well, they want to make
because. Well, go ahead. Go ahead. What do you got?
Sutra wants to make it as horrific as possible. She's deliberately staging things in a disturbing, creepy way, just so that the other androids can't possibly stop thinking about just how bad this is. So
yeah, they're also probably not used to death. This might be the first time they've ever seen someone who's dead.
Yeah.
So they might not have like they probably don't know how to act.
Yeah. I mean, they knew to scream, but so.
Well. That's just a primal reaction.
Well, yes. Even animals know how to do that.
Dave in the chat is saying that this is the hummingbird of prey.
Oh!
It is, I guess, a Romulan way to kill somebody.
That is true, yes. If you go into the old FASA role-playing game books, they have all these. They have a book of Romulan starships, and then there's a shuttlecraft that's literally translates as the Duck of Doom.
Oh, that's silly.
Yeah, well, no, it was the Duck of Doom translated into English.
Well, like you were saying, Picard does try to speechify his way out of this. It works more often than not.
And it was working there until Soon came in.
Yeah, the whole audience seemed to be captivated by what he was saying, where he promises to be an advocate for them. And he says, I understand why you don't trust me after what happened with the band from Mars and this Romulan fleet's on its way to kill you, but I can save you. I can take you off this world. I promise I can save you. The Federation will listen to me. And then Soong is just like, no, they won't. They didn't listen to you before. And he seems more like Eric Soong here, where he says, all right, kids, listen to me. It reminded me of Arik Soong and the Augments in Enterprise.
Yes. Yeah, and I liked that the writers realized that Picard's super weapon is his speech, and when the chips are down, they have Picard pull out his weapon and deploy it. And then they also have Sutra be smart enough to realize how big of a danger that is, and him and her and Soon have to shut him up quickly because they know that things will likely fall apart if they do not take control and muzzle Picard. And I was like, wow, this is written by people who truly understand Picard and the nuances of the way Star Trek stories work when Picard is in them. So I was impressed with that.
Now, Soji has a really cool line here when she actually says that she's going to side with Sutra and Soong and tells Picard, "We're not the Romulan evacuation. We cannot be your redemption." And Picard, he still has guilt about like when he couldn't speech away his way to save the Romulans. When he told the Federation, when he told Starfleet, look, either we go through with this evacuation or you have my resignation. And they told him, well, resign then. And he's trying to make up for that here. Probably he's like, I couldn't save all of those people. Maybe I can save all of these people. Yeah, but he's like no, like. We're not going to be your redemption, Picard.
And by throwing that in there, it casts that not only that scene, but everything Picard has done in this season in a we have to go back and reevaluate it kind of light. Mm-hmm. Oh, why is Picard doing this? Was that what this was all about for Picard? So right on. They deploy the Picard speech. They have somebody outwit the Picard speech, and then they throw in something that has us reevaluating what Picard's motivations were unconsciously for the entire season. All in like the space of a couple of minutes. It is very, very impressive on that point. The more I think about it, the more that I realize there's a lot going on in that scene. And that's before we even get into the moral, ethical question of whether or not it's right to, kill all the people and, whatever to save your own people.
But, like if you put yourself in their shoes, if you imagine what it's like for these synths, it would basically be like if someone told you like, hey, there's some aliens coming to Earth in the year 2020, and they're going to blow up your planet unless you hit this button that's going to bring someone who is going to kill all the aliens in the whole galaxy to save you. Would you push that button? Would you be like, no, we're gonna try to like talk our way out of this alien battle fleet that's coming to kill us, or we're gonna try to like defeat them and save the planet that way.
And the guy offering the button says, no, we've seen how this goes down. It always goes badly. Your only hope is to push this button.
Yeah. So, Sutra is very villainous, and, she kills one of her own people and lies to everybody to move her agenda forward. But you can understand where she's coming from. So
yeah,
that kind of like nuanced antagonist that we like to see in Star Trek, I think.
Yeah, well, you can see she looks over at these are all a bunch of innocent sheep. They are going to no, I've got to take charge of this. That's the only hope. I got to be the make the hard decision. So
Soji seems to betray Picard and back Sutra. I'm suspicious of if that's going to last. We'll find out next week. But also Agnes does the same thing when she tells Sutra like, no, like let me help you. I'm willing to die for you. I'm willing to die to save my children. You're like children to me. And Sutra, who can tell if she's lying or not, is like, oh, you're telling the truth.
But I suspect we have to look carefully at what that truth was. The truth was she was willing to die to save the synths. That doesn't mean she's going to help them destroy all life in the galaxy.
Yeah. Or it doesn't mean that she won't stick around long enough to like help Picard or something.
Yeah. It just means that she is committed on that one point. That's kind of what they tell us. So yeah, you've got to carefully parse what was said in there. So some more fun writing.
And then the very final thing we see is Commodore O decked out in her badass Tal Shiar gear on the bridge of a Romulan ship. And we find out that this fleet is only 24 hours away.
Yep. I had two things I noticed. One, they do one of those famous sci-fi, now very common ever since the advent of CGI, pull back from a window to show the whole big spaceship thing. And well, I'm sure that was supposed to be impressive. The thing that hit me was these warbirds are tiny compared to the Diderex classes that we have seen in the past. This thing is significantly smaller than a Galaxy class starship, let alone those huge ass warbirds.
I always thought the Diderex was a little too big. Even though it doesn't have that much internal volume, it's mainly like empty space in the middle.
Oh yes,
but I'm okay with a more compact warbird. I know you told me you were a little disappointed in this design.
Yes,
I'm glad that it's bird-like.
Yes. It checks all the boxes it needs to check. So I can't say I hate it. It's just meh. It is like the most, and given the beauty of the original series, Bird of Prey, Romulan Bird of Prey, and the Diderex class, which I think is also a very beautiful design. And I even like that little scout, those little TNG era scout ships, even though they're a little squarish and blocky. I just find that this is one of the most least interesting Romulan ships designs we've had. So and it's smaller than I thought. Headcanon wise, their home systems got destroyed, and they are just not quite what they used to be as an empire. Their ships are not as impressive as they used to be. That's my rationale. This is a bit of information to tell us things rather than perhaps a design oversight.
If someone asked me, hey, how should I design this Romulan ship? I would say, make it green and make it look like a bird. Yeah. And they got those two things right. So. Yeah. I also not as memorable as some of the past designs that we've seen.
Yeah, even the Valdor class, which I thought was a little overly spiky, I still prefer to this from Nemesis.
Yeah. But that's all we have in this episode. I do want to take some time just to talk about what is traditionally called a Chekhov's gun on the wall when you set something up in the first act to use it in the third act. But because this is Star Trek, I think we should call them Pavel Chekhov's guns or Pavel Chekhov's phasers. But there's
Chekhov's phasers. Chekhov's phasers.
Okay. There's been some things planted in here. Like number one, we got that golem.
Yep.
Dave in the chat mentioned, and I've heard other people saying this as well, maybe Picard's aerobotic syndrome is going to kill him, and that can be used to create a synthetic body for him, and we'll get synth Picard.
I don't want synth Picard. I would be okay with it starts to seriously disable him and only the AI android synth tech can fix him. I would be okay with that. Just like it could have fixed Troy and Riker's son. I would be that's even kind of foreshadowed at this point.
Speaking of Troy and Riker, we know that Chekhov's phaser is hanging on the wall. Riker said that he might re-enlist and he might reactivate in the Starfleet if he has a good enough reason. So we might see Riker showing up next week as part of this Starfleet squadron. There's also that.
Yeah, Troy said she couldn't go out and do that anymore, but Riker didn't say he couldn't.
Yeah.
So
he said that he would if he had a good enough reason.
Yeah. So you're right.
And also that Captain Crandall character that they mentioned several times in the episode Nepenthe.
Yeah.
Just saying maybe he's Q.
Oh. I think he's just an explanation for how Riker got off the planet.
Yeah,
they need to explain
more likely.
Because it's so hard to get off this planet. Well, then how did Riker get off later? Well, we need to establish that there was this back door that Riker could have used to escape, or to get back to Starfleet.
And then we also have the Borg artifact, which really needs to do something cool next week.
Please have 7 of 9 come in and be as badass as when she was taking out that crime lord on Free Cloud. So,
but Brian, do you have any other big thoughts on this episode or predictions for next week? Either one.
Let's see. That we have not yet discussed. I think there will be a space battle. I do think it's interesting that it's 20 hours. So the space battle is a minimum of 20 hours away, which I think is surprising. I was thinking it was going to be closer than that. I actually missed that detail until you just mentioned it.
Yeah, but 24 hours. That's what the Romulan tells Commodore O. He says 24 hours till landfall.
Yes, which
landfall
just happens.
is a weird terminology.
Oh,
it's like, are you actually going to land on the land?
Well, they have to, so Elnor can do his sword thing.
You should say 24 hours before we enter the system.
Yeah, or until we reach the planet or something. Yes, it does feel a little weird. It's also weird that the Romulans are. It just happens to be the length of a Earth day that the Romulans are talking about. Not 23 hours or not 27 hours or something.
It'd be a lot cooler if it was 47 hours.
Well, then they'd have a whole lot of stuff to fill out before their space battle next week. It's not quite next week now, but yes, it's got they're going to have, there's definitely going to be a lot more stuff that happens on that planet before the space battle. It's not going to be like the last season finale of Enterprise of Discovery, where the whole episode was crazy shooting, exploding stuff. The only prediction I'm going to throw out has nothing to do with the next episode. I think season 2 is going to be about the United Federation of Skynet. I think that's what we're going to do for season 2.
Okay, that's a possibility. I would actually be okay if we just wrap up the stuff with the synths in general. I think it'd be cool if the synth gods or whatever, if they kind of reveal to be something else. If we've been a little misled there, maybe the test is to see if these synths are actually a threat to organics, and if they actually press the button to go and summon the synth gods, maybe they fail the test if they do that.
Oh, yeah. No, I'd be fine with that. That would be something cool to do in season 2.
Yeah, maybe if Soji convinces the rest of them to not do that, and then we find out oh, you passed the test. You've proven to all the organics that you're not a danger and you can continue to exist and be happy synthetic people and go evolve and do your own thing.
I think that's the sort of a twist Roddenberry would approve of.
Yes.
I did occur to me that it would be hilarious if the Romulans are almost there and they're like, screw it, we're sending this, but we're calling in the gods, and they push the button and the signal goes out, and then the signal's coming back in, and they say, what does it say? It says they will come for us. They will be here in 2 weeks. And the Romulans start killing them. I just thought that would be hilarious. They're not going to do that. Never
happens if they actually wipe out all organic life in the galaxy, and then when we get to season 3 of Enterprise, it's oh yeah, only the artificial beings survived. But
that it does occur to me now that I think about what if they can't. They're like, okay, we'll be there in 1 year to save you, and then you're like, then everything gets resolved in the season finale. But now the Federation has 1 year to figure out what to do about this thing that's coming. That would be an interesting bit of ticking clock.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting way to kind of end it on. Like, I think there might be some type of cliffhanger like that, just to draw people back for season 2.
Yeah,
considering how both seasons of Discovery ended with a resolution to that season's story, but also with a cliffhanger.
Yes,
it's likely that something like that will happen.
All right. Yeah, I just thought of that now, but now I really like that idea. That's absolutely what I would do if I was in charge. Is that the signal gets sent, but they're not going to get here for a year, so we've got one more season to figure out what we're going to do about it. So,
anyone listening to us should give us your theories and also let us know your opinions, and we might be able to go over some of those Sunday when we discuss the next episode, the finale. And just last thing on this episode, real quick, I'm going to run through the Gorn eggs.
I was about to wonder, were we not getting any Gorn eggs?
I'm going to knock them out real fast because we're running out of time. But all the Star Trek Easter eggs in the episode, or just Easter eggs in general. So this week on the Gorn eggs, we have Coppelius and Coppelius Station. Coppelius is from the German short story by E.T.A. Hoffmann called The Sandman. It's about where one of the characters in there is a brother who possibly kills the father, and so that might be an indication of lore being involved. Just throwing it out there in case I'm right. Also, we have mention of homicidal fungi. That might be a reference to the Enterprise episode Vox Sola, another Latin title, where we see characters on Enterprise trapped in what looks like a big ball of fungus. Kind of nasty, and reminded me of the terrible 90s Mario Brothers movie. Hashtag trust the fungus. Next up, I have the androids with gold skin and gold eyes. Obviously look a lot like Data from Star Trek Next Generation, the more artificial looking type android.
I tend to assume those are built more on the Data model without as much organic stuff, but that's just an assumption.
No, I think we can, since those are the ones around when the Ibn Majed and Rios came by, since those are the ones around then, because he said that Sutra looked just like Jana. I think those might be like the earlier version, whereas Daj and Soji were like the newer, more advanced. We also get a reference to Surak, the father of Vulcan logic, who Sutra has studied. And she's also proficient at playing the Ka Athera, if I'm saying that correctly. And that is the Vulcan name for the Vulcan lute that was given to it in the 1985 novel Dwellers in the Crucible. After the mind meld, Sutra says the classic catchphrase, fascinating, which goes back to Spock in the original series, but was also used by Tuvok on Voyager and Data on TNG occasionally. Spot 2, the synthetic cat, is named after Spot 1, Data's cat in The Next Generation, who sometimes was a boy and sometimes was a girl.
And was different breeds of cat from time to time, too.
It was a very weird cat.
That was where Data got into his Sunnian roots of doing genetic modification.
Must be. But those are all the Gorn eggs I caught. Again, if you had any, let me know, and we'll try to go over those in our subspace transmissions next time. And thank you, everyone who caught this live and for chatting along with us. And just let all y'all know, our next podcast, when we do the Picard finale, is going to be the big 100th Tex-Trek podcast. So we're doing that live Sunday at 8 p.m. Central. And please, if you can make it, check us out on YouTube and be part of the conversation as we discuss the final episode of Picard. I think everyone's going to have a lot of hot takes and opinions on that. And we got plenty of stuff to discuss after Picard. So look forward to more Tex-Trek content coming later this year. But we will see you all Sunday. And until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.